Hello, everybody. Our session today is called EB-5 for Beginners. My name is Joey Barnett. I am a partner at WR Immigration, and we are so very happy to have this call today. I am joined by my partner, Vivian, and she is an absolute star in EB-5. I don't think anybody's filed more cases than she has in the past 3 years. And we today are talking about EB-5 for beginners, EB-5 101. I see participants are coming in, so we'll just kind of go through some of these basic slides in the beginning. And for the thousands of viewers listening in today on YouTube, thank you so much, and feel free to subscribe. We have a lot of great content about EB-5 and other U.S. immigration news and updates, so please subscribe to WR Immigration. This is, of course, not legal advice. It's just for information purposes, but please feel free to reach out to us if you do have questions about EB-5 or if we can help you with your case, or if you have any questions about this visa category. WR Immigration, we are a full-service immigration law firm. We have nearly 200 professionals working and 40 attorneys. We are consistently ranked as one of the top EB-5 firms in the country. No, in the world. No, in the galaxy. And but seriously, we do have an amazing team with a lot of track record of success. I think we have over 10 people with over 10 years of EB-5 experience, and we file hundreds of cases every year. And so the point of today's call is really to talk about EB-5 from a 30,000-foot view, for people who are new to EB-5 and are trying to understand where this may come into your immigration journey. And the way that I like describing EB-5 and immigration in general is this sort of like a ladder. And a lot of people come into the United States on a student visa or a work visa. These are non-immigrant visas, which allow an individual to be in the United States for a particular purpose for a particular amount of time. And if it's a student visa, you obviously need to continue going to school to maintain that status. If it's a work visa, you need to have a U.S. employer who is sponsoring you. And there are limited options for individuals to come into the United States, in both for work purposes. And it's not like you can just come into the United States and apply to hang out here. There are certain visa categories that you can apply for, including the B1 visitor visa. Those are non-immigrant visa options, which generally require you to have the goal of leaving the United States and going back to your home country or being here for a short period of time. There are some non-immigrant visa options like the H-1B or the L-1, which gives you sort of dual intent capabilities, which is nice. But again, it doesn't by itself lead to a green card. A green card is the right to live here forever, and not necessarily be tied to employer. And it isn't based on like, a certain time period or having a certain purpose. And so what people generally do or have done historically in EB-5 is, first you go to school, then you do some OPT, then you find an employer to sponsor you for a couple of years. Then after you show that you're a good worker and they want to sponsor you for a green card, they go through that process and go through the Department of Labor and show that there is no ready, willing, and able U.S. worker able to do that job. It's a long process, and it requires employer sponsorship. It requires you to potentially stay with the same employer or at least do additional filings if you leave that employer. And it's not always a given. Whereas EB-5 is a separate green card option that allows you to kind of skip the need to have a U.S. employer sponsor you. It is based on your investment of lawfully obtained capital into a U.S. company. It allows you to remain into the United States forever. And that also gives you the ability to sponsor other family members, to apply for U.S. citizenship if you want. And so it's all about kind of climbing that immigration ladder. And I have just found EB-5 to be a sort of, if you're able to afford it, it's a nice ladder that you get to, well, I guess you get to skip a couple of steps in the ladder if you're able to afford it. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with this immigration ladder. Um, Vivian, is there anything that you wanted to raise here? I mean, your clients are in the United States, but they're also outside of the United States. Do you see a big difference in what they're looking at in EB-5 based on their location?
Yes. So after March 2022, we can have concurrent filing for EB-5 petitioners. So today, most of our clients are actually based in the US. They're either students or people who are working here on one of the work visas. So that's why this concurrent filing and this immigration letter is even more relevant to our topic today. Because if you're in the US on a non-immigrant visa status, you can file the concurrent filing with your EB-5 petition. In other words, you can just wait for your green card inside the US. For people who are outside the US, the normal process is just after the EB-5 petition is approved, they go through a consular processing, they do an interview at a US consulate in their home country, and then they get an immigrant visa to come to the US to trigger the production of their green card. But with concurrent filing, people who are already here in the US can adjust their status from, say, F1 or H1B visas to the green card directly, and there's usually no interview required. So that's one benefit, and I believe that's the reason why most of our current clients are people who are already based in the US, and also with the current administration and what's happening with F1 and the international students today, people are more concerned about their ability to maintain their F1 status or go, or finish their education at school in the US, or people who are concerned about whether they're able to get the H1B lottery after graduation. That's why many students these days are filing EB-5 concurrent filing. For individuals coming from China who are born in China, there is an anticipated waiting line coming up. So I would say that there's only a small window of time you can do the concurrent filing, because once the waiting line starts, you cannot do concurrent. You can only file your EB-5 and wait for the your spot in the line to come up and then adjust your status.
Right. That's actually a really, really good point, and I agree, a big change in 2022, because before then, if you were doing EB-5 and you were in the United States, you had to wait for your initial EB-5 petition to be approved before you can apply for an adjustment of status. Now you can apply for them at the same time or concurrently. That is a new thing that was allowed in 2022 and has really pushed a lot of individuals in the United States to look at EB-5 a little bit more closely, because they're able to get the interim benefits associated with the filing of an adjustment of status um, at the same time that they file the EB-5 petition. So and we're going to get into that process a bit more detailed, but I think that's a really good point, and why we are seeing so many people who are here on F1 or on H1B look at EB-5 as a long-term solution. I want to talk really high level about what the requirements for EB-5 are. And ultimately, EB-5 is a job creation program. And if you create the jobs and you keep your money at risk and it doesn't come back to you for a certain period of time, then you get the full immigration benefit. And so the reason why Congress created this preference category is to spur job creation. And this regional center program has been passed by Congress time and time again. And it is currently set to expire in 2027. And we fully expect Congress to pass it extensions like they have done in the past. But the point of the program is to create jobs for U.S. workers at no expense or cost to the U.S. taxpayers. And so it is very much in line with an America First immigration policy that I think the Trump administration is trying to pursue. And that's why I think EB-5 is ultimately going to stay in the books, in the law, long term, is because it does actually bring a lot of benefit to the United States. The big thing that an individual investor needs to document is how they earned the investment capital. And that minimum investment amount is $800,000. And that's if the project is located in a rural area, in a high unemployment area, or an infrastructure project. And if it's not in one of those locations, then the minimum investment is $1,050,000. But generally, what you're seeing in the market are offerings of 800K. And you have to show that that money is lawfully obtained capital. And this is where an immigration attorney is so important, because the United States government will act like a forensic accountant and really dive deep into the documents showing that the money was lawfully obtained. And, we have filed thousands of these petitions over the years, and it seems like they are getting just more and more scrutiny. They pick on more and more things, and it's really important that you use an immigration attorney with EB-5 experience to prepare that legal brief, because that is sort of the main eligibility requirement from the investor for EB-5. And we'll talk about that in just one moment. The other main part of it, obviously, is the job creation. And so this actually is the biggest decision that an EB-5 investor will make is, well, what project am I going to invest in? And is it going to create the jobs and make sure that the immigration goals are met? And is it going to be a financially viable project and be able to repay the money? Because EB-5 is an investment. It's not a donation, right? That's one of the big things between EB-5 and Gold Card that Mr. Trump has proposed is you're not getting that 5 million back. In EB-5, if you invest correctly and wisely, you have the opportunity of getting the money to come back, and you get some return on that investment as well. Or at least you are in the position to. And so that selection about the project is incredibly important. And we're going to dive more into that and sort of the structure of that later on. But this is just a 30,000-foot view of what those requirements are. Vivian, maybe you can talk to us about job creation and the regional center model and why it's so beneficial for investors. And can you maybe also talk about like what sort of jobs can be counted, and how projects can use bridge financing to move a project forward and sort of mitigate that immigration risk as well?
Yeah, I just want to mention that these three listed requirements are mostly for regional center investors. There are also other requirements, say for the projects or NCE to have like a compliance reporting. Those requirements are not listed here. And also, if you're investing in a direct EB-5 project, there's also requirement for the investor to be involved in the management of the company or the operation of the project. So we're only listing like the three most common requirements for regional center investors. For job creations for regional center projects, um, you can count in construction jobs like indirect jobs that are calculated using, economic mathematics, not actually, like individual jobs per se. So that's one benefit of the regional center EB-5 program, and that is why it is so popular because the investors do not want to get personally involved in a U.S. company since they're foreign nationals. Sometimes they still reside overseas, so they just want to put the money in. So with the regional center projects, the jobs are counted usually with the construction of a project, like a realistic project. Once the realistic project is complete, the construction is complete, and everything's complete, it's usually considered the job creation is complete. With the new EB-5 law, I believe there's an addition of direct job creation requirements. If I remember correctly, is it 10%, Joe?
It depends on how long the construction of the project lasts for. If it's
Okay.
over, yeah, if it's over 2 years or under 2 years. But generally, those direct jobs can be counted through the economic model that the project puts together. And that is part of the filing that a regional center does to get a project eligible to receive EB-5 capital. But I just want to say, Vivian, that's a really good point what you make. This should totally say EB-5 requirements for regional center investors.
Yes.
No
Yes.
doubt about that. So maybe we can mark that up and
Mm.
make sure that that's included because that's a very good point. Um, Partial payments, I put that on there because the law allows an EB-5 investor to be actively in the process of investing at the time of filing the initial application. And so it is possible to not invest the full 800K and do the initial filing. There are potential risks associated with that, but it is a possibility and something that you can speak with an immigration attorney about. It's very fact specific. Um, can I just run down a couple of maybe yes or no questions that you can answer, Vivian, about EB-5?
Okay, I I just answered one.
Oh,
Uh, are there are there any other open questions? Because I only see one here.
oh yeah.
Is
That's a good point. We do have questions at the bottom, so if you do have questions, feel free to put them in there. But let me ask you this. I mean, can EB-5 money be gifted from parents?
Yes, of course. But whoever provided the funds will have to provide the documentation for the source of the funds.
What about can parents loan money to a child?
Yes, yes, they can.
Can other family members gift or loan money to the investor?
Any Yes, any person can gift or loan money to the EB-5 investor, but the law requires that either the gift or the loan must be authentic. It means that if it's a gift, there's no conditions attached. It's a gift. There's no return of the money in any other way. If it's a loan, then it also has to be genuine. If the loan agreement says it's a 5-year loan with a 5% interest rate, the immigration may request evidence to show that you have paid the interest, depending on what the loan agreement says.
Right. So it is possible, but it's something you need to talk with your attorney
Yes.
about.
Yeah,
Uh,
like how do you show the loan or gift is genuine? If this is from somebody you don't know, then how do you show it's a like why do they give you this $800,000? It sounds like too good to be true, right? So it has to be like analyzed based on the fact of that.
right. And so what the government is concerned about is that this money wasn't appropriately taxed, or maybe it's drug money or criminal money. Pretty much the burden is on the investor to convince USCIS that it's none of that, right? It's not the opposite way. The burden is on the investor to provide documents showing that the money is lawfully obtained capital. If you are not able to provide certain documents to back that claim up, it may not be the best source for your EB-5 capital. So it's something that you will strategize with your EB-5 attorney to see, well, what exactly makes the most amount of sense? What documents do we have? What documents are no longer available? Like Vivian, for example, what are some of the more common, aside from just like gift or loan, like what are some more common sources of an EB-5 investment capital?
We have cases that uses all different types of source of funds. The most common for Chinese individuals is from, it's related to their real estate property. It's either sale of a property or using the property as a collateral to get a bank loan. But also we have many people using their employment income or company profit, dividend, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no like guideline, like specific guideline on what kind of documents you should provide for each type of source of funds. But the law does says whoever provides the fund will usually have to provide a 7-year tax returns to show that they are like a genuine, law-abiding, tax-paying good person.
Right. They're really, really specific about this. I mentioned earlier, they act like a forensic accountant. They want to see debits matching credits. They are really tracking the money through accounts, and they want to see that in order to get the case approved. I mean, I always tell prospective clients that EB-5 is not rocket science. It's show me the money, right? And it's just getting the documents to show the government that the money was and is lawfully obtained. Um, Trying to think if there's some other very general common questions about source of funds. If people have them, please feel free to put them in the chat. We are going to, oh, I guess the other thing I want to mention is with the job creation. So when you're using these economic methodologies to count the jobs, which is what you're allowed to do when you go through a regional center, the way that it works is jobs aren't in existence for a period of time. They're not required to. The job creation is based on either expenditures of like for development or construction of the project, or based on revenue of the operations of the project. And as long as the money is spent, as long as the revenue is created, then those jobs are also created and they do not need to last for a period of time. That's one of the biggest benefits of going with a regional center and a common question that I get about job creation. All right, so Vivian, why don't you kind of walk us through a general process? If someone were to come to you and say, all right, Vivian, I want to do EB-5, what are the next steps? How can I do this? Can you kind of maybe just walk us through the process and we can dive into each step, I guess, as we go through.
Okay. So we have listed like 8 points in the EB-5 process for the general immigration process. So I believe like if you see some TikTokers or YouTuber telling you that you can DIY it through your way to a US naturalization, I don't know if you should believe them because just for EB-5, there's like a lot of parties involved, and you probably need like 3 or 5 teams of experts helping you from different perspectives, right? So for me, if I talk to my client, the first question I would ask them is, do you want a green card? Do you want to live in the US? Because with a green card, you're required to live in the US or call US home. It's not something for you to get it, to use it as a visitor visa and then you still live and work in your home country. That's not how it works. And also for tax purposes, I usually advise my client to hire a tax advisor or tax lawyer on day one because with the start of EB-5 process, the tax person may help you with the source of fund issues as well as some tax planning before getting the green card. Because after you get the green card, your your global income is subject to the U.S. taxation reporting. So that's something that we didn't list on this slide, but you should definitely consider. So you ask yourself, okay, I know that I need to invest 800,000 and I want a green card. Where should I start? You can start talking to an immigration lawyer who can just give you a general roadmap on this whole process. They may give you some guidance on how to find a good project, but usually immigration lawyers are not supposed to give you any investment advice because they're not the financial or economic experts. For project finding, people take different approaches. Some people have their own investment advisors, or some people are themselves are, experienced investors or business people. So they believe they have the capacity or ability to choose a good project. So they just go directly to, do their own research, find the EB-5 project they're interested in. But either way, my advice to my clients is you should at least carefully review 3 to 4 or 3 to 5 projects and to compare them before you make an investment decision. Because choosing a good project is very, very important. It's probably the most important thing in the whole EB-5 process, because the success of the project will determine whether you get the green card or not, right? Whether you get your money back or not. So choosing a good project is very important. And there are many, many things you need to, watch for when you're considering investing in an EB-5 project. If someone is pushing you to make the investment quickly, or, like this is our last spot that you should do it now, then I will probably, stay away from it, or, just watch for anything that may raise a red flag. You should just check check the reputation of the regional center or the project on whether they have a strong track record for 526 and 829 approvals in the past, and whether they can provide audited financial documentation for your review, or whether they have been in compliance with USCIS or other laws for the project company. And also, I would highly recommend you talk to an experienced EB-5 investment advisor in, choosing a project, or do some due diligence on your behalf. Due diligence is is very important.
Can I just interrupt you for a moment, Vivian? Because I think you raised such a good point about what an immigration attorney can and cannot do. That is something, we can't provide financial investment advice. We're not licensed to do that. We frankly don't know how to analyze projects, or at least I don't know how to analyze projects to say whether this is going to be a good return on your investment. That is sort of besides the point to EB-5 compliance. You can get the full immigration benefit and lose all the money. So with EB-5, immigration is a big part of the story, but it's not the full story, right? We have had clients go into projects where the jobs were created. They've gotten the conditions removed. They've even become US citizens, but they've never gotten their money back because the business didn't do well and it had filed for bankruptcy. That happens, right? So the question becomes well, how do you best protect yourself in the event that they don't repay the money? And that is something that is project specific. Just like anything else in this world, high returns, high reward, lower returns, low reward, low risk. Um, and there are different projects out on the market for an investor to choose. You can have and I guess what I'm just trying to say is that our job is to evaluate EB-5 compliance and immigration risk, which is separate and apart from financial risk. And I agree with Vivian that it's smart that you get both sides of the coin before you make your decision.
Yes. So one of the most common questions I got from my clients is, what is your success rate in the EB-5 process? So my answer would be like, how do you define success? I would say the chance of you getting the green card is probably over 90%, but the chance of getting your money back is significantly lower than that. That's why you need financial advisors to choose a good project, because even if, as of today, we have many clients who get their permanent green card but still have their money stuck in the project, or with very little chance to getting them back, because after COVID, the whole real estate market in the US has changed, and many people or many project, many developers have troubles with their financing or finishing the project. The investors can still get their green card, but they will probably, the chance of getting their money back is probably not high, or it can be, the timeline will be hugely delayed as compared to the original timeline of getting the money back. So I would say the most important parties in the EB-5 process is your immigration lawyers and your financial advisor, or whoever the intermediary, that person or agent that connect you to the project, or just the project. So if you're someone who are located overseas or do not speak English, and you need a third person to communicate with the regional center or the project on your behalf, then you should probably, keep this person close, don't lose their contact, because they still need to negotiate for you when the time comes to return your investment capital.
Yeah, and I think that gets to, like anything in life, there's risks, and it's about how you can mitigate those risks and what decisions you can have in the beginning of the process to make sure that the ride is as smooth as possible. And there's different structures to EB-5 projects out there, which give different levels of risk. And it's just something that we think is incredibly important to talk about or to consider before making that decision. Um,
So at the same time that you're selecting a project, you can also get started with your source of funds. That is to prepare 800,000 US dollars plus the administrative fee charged by the project. And you need a strategy that works for the source of funds purpose. As we mentioned, the immigration will check every penny to make sure they're from a legal source. So it is very important to hire an immigration attorney from day one to start your source of funds, because the attorney can tell you whether you have a viable source of funds strategy. If you don't, then you cannot you cannot just make the investment, because your case will get denied. So you can talk to the attorney about a viable source of funds strategy, or if you don't have viable source of funds, are there alternative ways to get the money? Say if you have someone like a friend or family member who can help provide a documented 800,000, then you can probably get a gift or loan from that person. So those are alternative ways to work the source of funds. And also you can get a bank loan, but most bank would require some sort of collateral, usually your assets or property or your investment or cash in the bank. If you're providing the collateral to the bank, and the bank will loan you the money for EB-5, it doesn't mean that you don't have to provide any documentation. You still have to document how you acquire the collateral that secure the bank loan. For example, if you collateralize your property, your house, to get a 800 bank loan, then you will have to tell the immigration how you acquired the property and how much you paid for the property and what kind of money you used to purchase the property in the first place. Even if it happens like more than 20 years ago, we are still seeing USCIS making the request for historical bank records. So it's quite important to work out a viable source of funds strategy before you make the investment, or wiring the money to the US.
Yeah,
And
sorry, I wanna interrupt that, just sorry to keep doing that, but, you really shouldn't invest money until you talk to an EB-5 attorney first, and that is so
yes.
important. Sometimes it's very difficult, to go back in time, as you can imagine, to make mistakes, fixable to fix mistakes for EB-5. It can be very difficult to do that once the money has already been transferred. And there are issues of commingling and other stuff like that that you really want to have an immigration attorney look at before you transfer the funds. Uh, so let's say that you've made your project selection, you got your source of funds done, you got your medical exam done here in the United States, and you're ready to file your EB-5 case. What are the next steps?
Oh, one more thing is that if you're filing a concurrent adjustment of status, and for I-485, you should also have the attorney, review your immigration status in the U.S., whether you have a valid F1 or H1B or L1 status here. And when did you last enter the country? Have you maintained your status from your last entry? If you have an out of status, has it been more than 180 days? Remember, the new law does allow that up to 180 days out of status. Say if you're fired or terminated by your H-1B employer, you still have 180 days to file the EB-5 with concurrent filing, and then you can remain here after the case is filed. If your I-20 is terminated, you also have 180 days to file the EB-5 concurrent filing. So that's called the 245 protection, 245K protection, and that comes with the 2022 EB-5 law.
Oh yeah.
After
Sorry. The other thing is if you're in the United States, you are supposed to be an accredited investor in order to, um, and that's in order to make the subscription, and the company will require that. And you can use the EB-5 investment money as part of your assets for that qualification, but it is another step as well if you're in the United States.
So that's under the U.S. securities law, and that's another perspective of your EB-5 process, and should be reviewed by some other experts. That is why you need a lot of experts to work with you through the EB-5 process. And so after the 526 is approved, can you get the green card immediately? I think the answer is maybe, depending on where you come from. If there's no visa backlog in your country of chargeability, yes, you can get your conditional green card. Not immediately, maybe allow a couple of months for the immigration to process your 485. The 485 is actually your green card application. So even if you file the 485 at the same time with your 526, the immigration will not touch it. They will put it aside and wait for your 526, which is an EB-5 petition, to get approved first. And once the 526 is approved, the EB-5 office will tell the USCIS office that's processing your 485 and say, hey, this person has the underlying petitions approved, and you can process his green card if there's a visa available. If there's a visa available, say there's no visa backlog in your country of chargeability, then you probably get your conditional green card in 5 to 8 months. But if there's a visa backlog, as it will anticipate it to happen maybe next year for people from China, then your 485 will still be put on hold until your spot in the line is coming up. But since you filed the concurrent 485, you can remain in the US while your visa waiting line is pending. And you will still get the temporary work permit and travel permit valid for 5 years and can be renewed indefinitely until the approval of your green card. So after you get the 2-year conditional green card, congratulations, you're officially a permanent resident of the United States. Even it's called a conditional green card, it's still a green card. Your status will be a lawful permanent resident. It doesn't matter if it's a conditional or permanent. The only difference is after the 2-year conditional green card expiration date, we'll file 829 petition to remove the condition. And at that time, the immigration will double check your EB-5 project to see if they have completed the job creation and other requirements. And if yes, the 829 can be approved, and you'll get the permanent green card that's valid for 10 years or more. And for naturalization, the time the clock starts from the issuance date of your conditional green card. So if you have been if before the 5th anniversary of your conditional green card issuance date, and if you have lived in the US for more than half of the time, and you have never spent more than 6 months in one trip, you may be eligible for naturalization, and which is to become a US citizen. Anything you want to add, Joe?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things I want to add. Um, so the point is, and this is one of the questions, is there a backlog for Indians born in EB-5 for India, born in India for EB-5? And I would say the answer for that one is also yes. And that doesn't prevent you from filing the I-526. It doesn't prevent you at this time from filing the I-485, which is the adjustment. It does not prevent you from filing the 765 or the 131, which gives you unrestricted work authorization and the ability to travel during the time in which the adjustment is pending. So there will be a time in which the adjustment is pending, and during that time, you can remain in the United States lawfully, either maintaining your non-immigrant visa status or not, although we advise that you do until your 526E is at least approved, if you can. But you can extend those EADs and advanced paroles indefinitely if their backlogs continue beyond the 5-year validity. And this is why so many people are looking at EB-5 is it's a backup option, right? They're here on H-1B and have a great job, but they're worried about extensions or worried about layoffs. Well, they're doing this because, or they're worried because their EB-2 or EB-3 priority date is in 2017 and they're having kids that are going to age out. EB-5 gives them that ability to lock the kids' age in now and to have that backup plan with the EAD in the event something were to happen with their H-1B employment. The other thing I wanted just to mention here was the 829 removal of conditions. Those conditions are two things. One, were the jobs created? And two, did you keep your money at risk for long enough? If the answer to both of those questions are yes, and you haven't gotten into any criminal issues, there's no immigration violations, you should feel pretty comfortable that your I-829 is going to be approved. It's just a matter of time. And that's why, again, it has to do with that first step, finding the EB-5 project, because both of those conditions relate solely to the project. You are tied to the EB-5 project as it moves you through the immigration process. Okay, let me just see if there's any questions here else that we have. No, okay, good. All right, let's keep moving forward. All right, so we have kind of talked about this a bit much, but it's so important that I wanted to raise it up again. And so maybe Vivian, I call you the queen of source of funds in EB-5 because I feel like you've seen it more than anybody else. So take it away.
Okay. How did you obtain the money being used to invest for EB-5? I think that's a question for the investors, not for me. So I would usually get the story from the client, like, what is your plan? How do you plan to get the money? Is the money from here in the US or from your home country or from your parents or from some other people? If they say, okay, I have $1 million in account ABCD, then I'll have to ask, where did you get the money? Like, can you show me the bank statements? How was the money accumulated? But as I mentioned before, the law does require 7-year tax return for whoever provided the EB-5 funds to the investor. Say if it's work income and it requires 7 years tax returns, If it's business income, then 7 years tax returns, tax filing for the company. Or if it's a loan from a private person or from a private company, then also 7 years tax return from the lender. And the government is definitely very, very picky, and they can deny cases that were the investors not able to provide documents from 20 years ago. But of course, we have a way to argue around it. But we're seeing like the government is getting more and more restrictive in terms of source of funds, especially from people, from certain countries like China and Vietnam, where there's, currency transfer restrictions and there's are no um, common ways to transfer the money out. So what happens is if you use an intermediary or third person, or you ask friends or family members to transfer the money for you, those people will also have to provide documents to show that how they transfer the money and whether the money they transferred was originally coming from you. So, like, every person needs to provide their IDs and explanation, bank statements, and et cetera, et cetera. And also, a source of funds would involve some securities or background checks. Say, the law says that it cannot be from a foreign government representative, although they didn't give a very detailed definition on foreign government representative. We would like to interpret as like if your parents are public servants or high officials working for a foreign government, then I would say their income cannot be used for EB-5 investment. But if the funds are from, say, a bank loan using a property as collateral, and the property was purchased with income from a government worker, then it's probably okay, as the foreign government income is not a direct source of funds. So there are direct funds, direct source and indirect source. So each case will have to be analyzed case by case on the facts. But there's like the common type of source of funds are, say, employment income or dividend from the company or sale of a property or stock, loans and gifts. So these are common types of source of fund, but you can be creative. You can even have, you know, the profit from Bitcoin or virtual currency transactions. But the problem is you would need to document the whole transaction process. You must show that you are the lawful owner of those Bitcoins. But if they have the platform has hide your identity or account number, then it's not gonna work for immigration. They will deny your case. And also certain types of companies on the what we call a blacklist of the US government, like certain technology companies in China or companies that are red flag for national security concerns. If the income or the person who provides the income is involved in those type of employment or companies, then it's probably not a good idea for them to provide source of funds for EB-5 purposes.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they are getting more and more restrictive on this stuff, and I see it coming up at different areas, because they've changed their policies over the years
Mhm.
to become more restrictive. And now we're starting to see some cases that were previously approved get looked at a second time based on these new policies, and we're seeing issues could pop up there as well. Um,
Mhm. I want to mention that, like Joey has been litigating cases where the 526 is denied for source of funds purpose. We have very strong litigation team, and I've seen people whose case was reversed through litigation. But it's not a precedent, right, Joe? For most cases, the immigration will still use their own standards, even if there's a similar case that was reversed by the court. then we argue that, we can argue that, there's this case that court has decided this way, and we have a similar case, so it should also be approved. But the immigration is not required to follow the court decisions. That is why you still need to be very careful with source of funds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I think we've kind of belabored the point potentially, but again, you need to talk with an immigration attorney about source of funds and specifically one who's done EB-5 because it's seemingly simple, but more difficult in practice. Um, okay, well, let's continue. So EB-5 projects, we've been talking about this. This is being the most important aspect of EB-5. Why folks go through regional centers is because you're able to count those construction-based jobs. Um, these other bullet points that I have here are considerations that EB-5 investors should be factoring into their decision making. What is the safety of investment? What is the plan for them to repay the capital? What is the return on the investment? Has the developer done this before? Have they built this thing before? Is there an operator that has raised money for EB-5 before? These are all very important aspects when you're looking at an EB-5 project, and these are sort of financial investment side of things that you should be looking at on top of the immigration side of it. Um, and, we work with dozens and dozens of EB-5 regional centers and developers. And there are different business models that regional centers have, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to understand that. And that's why we put together, well, actually, I kind of took it from Walter Ginden, who works at Can-Am, which is a regional center. But this diagram, which really explains the different entities involved in a regional center EB-5 program. And, you don't invest into a regional center. You invest into a project that is sponsored or affiliated with a regional center. A regional center is merely a entity that has been designated by USCIS to um, sponsor new commercial enterprises, to fund job creating entities, and to count the jobs that are created indirectly as well as directly. And the regional center has a lot of oversight and administrative responsibilities and is important, but it is not the full story when you're evaluating an EB-5 project. You want to be looking at the EB-5 regional center. You want to be looking at the new commercial enterprise. You want to be looking at the job creating entity. They all are important. Why is the job creating entity important? Well, that's the easiest one to understand because if they don't create the jobs, you don't get the green card, right? So who is this person who is going to be taking your money and spending it? Have they done it before? Have they repaid their loans in the past? Where are they in the actual construction of the project at this time? Do they have the permits? Do they have the entitlements? Do they have the funding in place to complete the construction? If not, is this a credible business plan? That's for you to decide, right? And if you don't like the business plan or you don't think it's credible or don't trust the developer, then maybe they're not the right project for you. Um, I think the harder thing to kind of understand is this new commercial enterprise. This is the entity that you make an equity investment in. You become a member of, or like an LLC member or a limited partner, and you pool your money into that company with other EB-5 investors. And the point of that company is to provide financing to the job creating entity. The day-to-day business of the new commercial enterprise is run by a general partner or a manager. They're the ones that are actually managing the operations, signing the loan agreement, transferring the funds to the job creating entity. Sometimes a regional center acts as a general partner. Sometimes a regional center acts as the job creating entity. Sometimes new commercial enterprise finds its own job creating entity, finds the deal, and then once the deal is put together, they look for a regional center to sponsor them. So there are different models out there, and I can't say that one is better than the other. They're just different risks associated with it. And so, you know, this chart, I think, gives a good breakdown of like the different roles of these entities. And hopefully, if there are conflicts of interest, and that's okay if there are, that is actually very common in the real estate development world. The question becomes, are they still acting in a fiduciary capacity and making sure that the jobs are going to be created and that the money is going to be managed appropriately? And again, I can't say one is better than the other. I just say it's something that people need to consider. The big thing that I wanted to mention here is that I want you to look at that arrow in between the line, or the arrow in between new commercial enterprise and job creating entity, where it says can be structured as debt or equity. This to me is where you can best protect yourself, or at least best have an understanding of the types of financial risks that are associated with EB-5. And there's unsecured debt and there's secured debt. If you're secured, there's different priorities potentially. Are you in the first position, or are you in the second or mezzanine position? Because a bank has also provided funding to the job creating entity and also is expecting to get a repayment of those funds. All of that impacts the risk profile of a project. And that is something that you speak with your immigration attorney on as it relates to the immigration risk, and with your financial advisor on as it relates to the investment side, financial risk. And generally, like I mentioned before, if there is a higher return, you're more likely to have a higher risk. If it's a lower return, you're likely to have a lower amount of risk. That's just generally how it works. But every project is different, and you need to be able to evaluate that. Vivian, do you have anything that you think should be mentioned on this slide that I didn't?
I got a question. Yeah, there's a question that just I just answered. Does the investor have any responsibility towards the RC? I would say the investors do not have direct relationship with the RCs. The investors are shareholders of the NCE.
I would
So
I would agree with
yeah,
you. I would say that the new commercial enterprise has obligations to the regional center, and that's usually spelled out in that sponsorship agreement. Hey, yeah, you have to provide us with the documents that we need on an annual basis so that we can file our annual reports. Or if there's an audit, you need to be able to give us those documents. That's the type of relationship that it sort of leaves the investors out of it, to be frank. So I would agree with you, Vivian.
I have a question. Can an NCE change RC?
Yes, there is no restriction on that. So you could have multiple regional centers file their own 956F for the same new commercial enterprise. It gets a little tricky, but yes, it can happen. And I commonly see that when somebody wants to raise EB-5 capital like today, but they also want to form their own regional center. And so they kind of do the first raise through one regional center and sort of a second raise or a second part of the raise of the same raise through their own regional center or something along those lines. Yes, that is possible.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
I
Um,
think we should move to the FAQs because we don't have much time.
Yes, I think we are running out of time, and thank you for everyone staying on. I see we have pretty much everyone still, so that's good. Um, so
Do you want to pick like one or two questions like each
yeah,
person?
I
We
think we
answer
only
like
have a
two
couple.
questions.
Yeah, I think we only have time for we have like over 70 questions here that we put together, but I don't think we really have time for it. I guess maybe the thing that I would want to ask you, Vivian, because I get this question a lot is, so can you file for a project that doesn't have an approval yet? And what is a 956F approval? What does that mean?
The 9556 approval is something that the project would file before they can file or before any investor can file their individual 526. But it doesn't have to be approved. As long as a project files its 956F, the investors can then go ahead and file their 526 petition. But the problem without approval is it can be denied. Even though it rarely happens, it like we've seen denials already, even if it's just a small number. So do you want to address the question, what are my options if the project I selected has its 526F denied? What happens then?
That's a great question. And I guess the answer depends on where the money is, and where the individual is, if they're in the United States or out of the United States, and if they've been maintaining their non-immigrant visa status if they're in the United States. So I think it's a very complicated, fact-dependent question. Maybe I don't know if it's something I can dive too much into, but it can put people in very bad situations. I'll say that.
Yes, yes. And also for people who have their 526 petition denied, you know, there can be there there's something you can do if you still want to go through the EB-5 process. If EB-5 is still your path to the US green card, then you can I would say if the money is still there, maybe you can withdraw the money and invest in a new project and then file a new 526 petition. If you're in the US and filed a concurrent 485 with the previous 526 petition, you may be able to file a new adjustment of status also. So, but it has to be carefully reviewed by an immigration attorney, and it depends on your current non-immigrant status or whether you have used a combo card or advanced parole to enter the US.
Right. Yeah, I do want to respect everyone's time and yours as well. And so I think we are gonna finish up here. But I do thank you so much, Vivian, for giving your insights. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. This is our website and YouTube and LinkedIn. You can do those QR codes. Visalaw at wolfstorf.com is our general email that you could send to if you have EB-5 questions. They'll be forwarded to Vivian and I. And here are our direct emails as well. I really hope this was a helpful call for you guys, and you learn that there are immigration considerations, there are investment considerations that you need to be taking into your decision making when you're doing EB-5, and we would be happy to help you guys on this journey. It is a long-term process that we are happy to assist with. So thank you so very much, and we hope we can help you in the future.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Vivian.